Okay, we are up to the bottom of Lamed Hey Amud Beis, and we are up to Notla Pit Masay. But before we start, today is Dalid El, the fourth day of El, and today is the yahrzeit of Rav Meir Simcha Cohen from Dvinsk, and he was the mechaber of the phenomenal sefer Meshech Chochmah and Or Sameach on the Rambam, both phenomenal sefarim. And his supposedly when his Meshech Chochmah was written, somebody, a balabas, was so blown away from the depth and the eye-opening svaris of the Meshech Chochmah that he sponsored the Meshech Chochmah to write the Or Sameach al Rambam. I don't know if that's a true story, but that's what I heard over. So I just want to share a beautiful thought on this week's parsha that the Meshech Chochmah shares with us. In the parsha, the Torah discusses the parsha of Edom Zoymim. So Edom Zoymim is if, let's say, two Edom come and say Edus that Reuven was Machal Shabbos, so Reuven normally would get killed. But if another pair of Edom came along and said that how could you have witnessed Reuven being Machal Shabbos in Toronto when that Shabbos you were with us in New York? So they place the Edom in an area where it's impossible that they would have been able to witness what they claim that they witnessed. When that happens, the halacha is, if they had intended to cause their victim to be killed with their testimony, they're killed. That's a pretty strong deterrent for somebody coming along and saying false testimony. Now, what if they didn't? What if the second agent didn't come and say you were with us elsewhere? They just said that we were there and Reuven was not Machal Shabbos that day. So that's called Hakchasha. Hakchasha merely disqualifies the first Edom, and of course you couldn't kill Reuven when there's another set of Edom that are contradicting them. But the Edom don't get punished. So the question is, why is it that by Hakchasha there is no punishment, and by Hazama there is punishment? B is the halacha is it says Vasisim lahem kasher zomam lasos, which means that if their victim was not yet killed by the Besdin, only then do you kill the Edom. But if the victim was already killed, then you no longer kill the Edom. And if you think about that, the Gemara says that is counterintuitive, because if they only attempted to kill him, we say that the Edom Zoymim get killed. Surely, if they succeeded, they should get killed. Those are the shilas that the Meshech deals with. So he offers a very, very simple and practical pshat. And the pshat, he says, is very simple. Imagine Reuven was condemned to death and was killed because two false Edom came and said that he was Machal Shabbos. So you can be sure that the family of the victim, the family of Reuven, will do everything in their power to take revenge of the false witnesses that caused their loved one to be killed. So then they'll hire Edom Zoymim on these guys, and then they'll be killed. And it'll go back and forth, and everyone will be getting killed, and it'll never stop. Therefore, we say it's kasher zomam v'loy kasher asa. The only way you'll be able to kill them is only if they were proven wrong before their loved one was killed. So let's think about it. We have a loved one on trial, and he's on trial for Chil Shabbos. There's Edom there, and there's Edom that are going to condemn him to death. Now they have a choice. The family has a choice. We can either just be makish them and save our relative, our loved one, or we can hire Edom Zoymim. We can hire Edom that'll be mazim them. Well, their attitude will be, right now our relative is alive. I'm not going to go cause the Edom to get killed. My relative is alive. I just want to neutralize the Edom. So I'll hire Edei Akasha, but I'm not going to hire Edei Azam. And therefore, that'll stop the cycle. So if my relative had not yet been killed yet, I'm not so angry that I want to kill those Edom. I'll just hire Edei Akasha. But once my relative is killed already, then I don't just want to exonerate him. Then I want to take revenge, and I want to get those Edom killed. Then I will hire Edei Azama. But since there's the rule of Kasher Zama, like Kasher Asa, I can't do that. So it stops everything in its tracks. And that's what the Meshech Chacham says. It's just a very interesting practical thought as to why the Rebbeinu Shalom made it Kasher Zama, like Kasher Asa. But by Kasha works all the time. Because we want to even if someone's going to hire false Edom, we'd rather them hire the false Edom to be makish the first set of Edom, rather than to be mazim them, because we don't want them to get killed. So that's the svar of the Meshech Chachma, Schusa Yogin Aleinu. I was looking through the parsha where it mentions Edei Azama, and I wasn't able to find it, but he does say it on this week's parsha. So I'm not sure which words of this week's parsha he says it on. But it's just an interesting explanation as to why by Edei Azama it's Kasher Zama like Kasher Asa. Okay, let's see the Heilige Gemara on Daf Lamed Hayam and Beis, not la put mosai. If the pitum of an esrig was removed, the Mishnah says the esrig is possible. Not la buchnasai. So the Rashi brings down two pshatim. There's the classical pshat that we're aware of, which is that the pitum is taken off. But Rashi also had another pshat that the uketz was taken off. Now there's two portions to the uketz. There's the uketz that's outside, that's on the exterior of the esrig, and then there's the uketz that sticks into the esrig. And the part that sticks into the esrig is what Rashi in the second pshat says this is referring to, but most poskim learn like the first pshat of Rashi. Good morning, Shmuel. Tosfos brings a different pshat to discuss different areas of the pitim, cause it to become possible. Halacha l'maisa, looking at halacha when it comes to taking off the pitim, it seems like if the very top of the pitim is removed, it's not a problem. Only if sort of the stem of the pitim was taken off, we could quickly take a peek inside, because pitim is something that everyone is familiar with. Everyone talks about it. So let's see, it's Tafresh Mem Ches Zayin Ches Tes. So let's quickly take a look at halacha. The Maisa, since the pitim is a very popular soul that everyone's familiar with. Okay, so let's see what it says over here. We finished discussing the holes. Let's look at Ches. Oh, here it is. Nital dadoi uharoi shakatan sheshantoi boy. So I'm in Tafresh Mem Ches Siv. Nital dadoi, if the very top of the pitim was taken off, uharoi shakatan sheshantoi boy. Possible, it's possible. So let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says, if we can identify precisely what this is. Chavtes, Nital dadoi, hua eitz, shal roisha esrim. Hadad, tip. Oh, no, this is not the top. This is the vertical stem that comes out of the top of the esrig, that the little pitim is on top of it. So we're not talking about the top, which is what the shashanta is. We're talking about the wood stem that comes out of the top. Let's see 51 and 52 in the Amudim. So it's an 80, because they always provide very clear and precise description. So it was, which oishas were there? It was 51 and 52. Let's have a look over here. 51. What if most of that wooden stock was removed, but there was a little bit connected to the esrog? Stop it, Meshach Shuvas, Aribas Aboisim, and Noimer by Finzeh, then Rubik of Kula lifts us Esrog. Do you say since most of it is missing, the Esrog is possible? The Hisik should be a Marishan Yavar Chalav, you shouldn't use it the first day, but the Shvus Yaakov says If it doesn't look like it's going to fall out, but if it's about to fall off, then it'll be a problem. Okay, so let's see what he explains it. The esrog is built like a tower. Rachav milamata, it's wider towards the bottom. And as you move north, it gets narrower. The place where it starts inclining into the center, that's called the choitim, the nose of the esrog. And at the tip, the top tip of the nose of the esrog, yoitza pitim, that's where the pitim comes out. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go. Yoitza pitim over here at the top of the palm B. Shu eitz haboilet kedad. It's a piece of wood that sticks out like a nipple. Me ala pitim yesh ken shishana. There's like a little wooden flower that looks like a little flower that's right on top of the pitim. The nitol pitim lagamri. If the pitim is totally removed, and you connected it with a needle. You put a needle into it, and then you shove the needle into the esrog. Choshev shel shuvishus Yaakov sheposel. The nafala ukut, but if the ukuts fell off, the choshev v'chibra deimachat. V'das hela alonso v'adam gimel v'das abel yoshev is esrog believe pitim kosher. Abel yoshev holds an esrog that pitim kosher. Ach teshemechaber b'machat. But if you try connecting with a needle, ein mekayim was a hider mitzvah f'shayim. It won't make it harder. So you haven't accomplished anything by reattaching the pitim. Sherei hider mitzvah whom she's a kelev anveyu. Uklabe shemayim yudua she'esrog ein mohuder. You can't fool shemayim by using a needle to put it back. Okay, so again, so if the wood, it's not the shashanta that's the problem, it's the wood that holds the shashanta, that's going to be possible. Agav yesh machmirim im nitla shashanta. Now those who are machmir, even if the top section was taken off, the haini mash anu current pitim. So what we refer to as the pitim zakterma is the very, very top of the pitim that has that little flower-shaped item. The toiv lahachmer, the makom she'efsher. Of course, it's better to be machmer, not to use an esrog. Rashi says, "Hainu she'efsher likach yoser muvcham zeh." If you can afford to buy something better, aval hu amuvchor. If this is the best you can find, ein lahachmer b'shul hashishanta. You can welcome near the dafka and chaser rak hashishanta. Dafka, just a little top is missing. Got mitzvahs in the eights, part of that wooden stem that goes out of the esrog towards the shashanta. Av sheyesh oit sas eitz l'mayla mina esrog, even though there's still some pitim left over there. Toiv lahader ligach achem efsheloi yesh machmir and gambazeh. Now those are machmir, so you can only be making if the top was removed. Mia l'indina in this soil ella in kenita ladad. It's only going to be possible if the wooden stem that comes out of the top of the esrog is also missing, not just the top flower red. The hainu H, the rosh pitmala. The rosh nikra shushanta. The top is called the shushanta. That for sure, you only should be macham efsher. But if the actual stem is missing, then there's a problem. That's only if you removed it. However, if it's a natural to grow without a pitim, for sure that's kosher. The Ramah, most of the Esrogim in our days, in our time, don't have a pitim. Okay, let's see the Mishabura, which we saw over here, and we'll see the dish as well. But kosher is referring to if it never had a pitim. Zok the Mishabura, Kivin Shekach Biyasan, that is how it is normally formed. Therefore, because that's how they grow. The Karman, you can tell that it wasn't chopped off, that's how it grew naturally. Because of it before Yaakov, there's a dafka, rak, gumamat. It only is natural if there's a small indentation. Since that's how it was formed, there's nothing really missing from it. Sometimes the esrogim that don't have a pitim have a deep indentation, a deep hole at the top. That's completely open. It's like so deep that it goes down until it reaches the citrus area. The if you put a needle in, you'll actually feel that's hollow in there. The puzzle gomer who didn't puzzle sherei nikev pateloda puzzle palecha denikav puzzle. Because if it's open all the way to the place where the seeds are, it'll be possible. These are very days and Mem Gimel B'Pim God Mechibin and Nikav at Chadri Azera possible didn't be Nikav at Elad. Okay, let's see.
Yes.
Yes.
You just clarify. Ukitz is comprised of what?
Ukitz is the stem that sticks out of the bottom of the esrog.
Oh, that's the bottom that connects to the branch.
Correct.
Okay. And then when the Gemara says Natla Buchnasai, what does Buchnasai mean?
Can you say that last name again?
It's in the Gemara. It said Natla
Buchnasai. Right. There's a shaila what Buchnasai means. There's a shaila if it means the ukitz at the bottom and the part that sticks in, or if it means the pitum on top.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so let's see. I want to see 59 or actually let's look 57 now because he goes through the details with pictures. What if just part of the Shoshanta is missing? So if a little part of the flowerette was missing, it's for sure not a problem. What if rather than take an esrog it's missing a little bit of the shashant on top, you took another esrog that's not mahudr, but at least it has that piece? In other words, if you're so makpid on the little top of your pitta, which is not so important, and because of that you compromise on other hidurim, you're a fool. In other words, you really don't make a big deal if the top of the pitta was missing. Okay? 58. So let's look at 57, 58. What is the Mishnah Berurah? What he's referring to? So Raka Shashanta is this, Miktas Mina Eitz is this. So this is a problem, but this is in fact not a problem at all. That's not even called like the pitum is missing. And then 59 is going on Machmir and Gamazeh. So let's see what it says. Kama Dargis Mona Bikur Yakin Binyan Hakashus Vahider Kish Lagabe Pitum. There's a couple of different scenarios to discuss regarding the pitum missing. Hamahudu B'Yosher. Best case scenario, Esrik Imadad Vishashanta Allah. And that's that's complete. Second best is Nitla Raka Shanta the Hadat Shalom. The top flower is missing, but the stem that sticks out of the top of the esrog is complete. The Nikir Shalom, well, and you can tell nothing's missing. And the third option is Lahayadat Ba'olam, if it never ever had that stem sticking out of the top. There's actually an indentation up there. And Dalid, the fourth scenario is Yesh Pitim Lita Katana, Nearest Kishashana. There's like a mini pit. There's a question that did it have it and it was cut off, or did it never have it? And even if it did have a pit and it was cut off, it's not cut all the way down to the esrog, there's still something sticking out. And then you have Nital Tzasmi Adad, if part of that stick is missing, but it's still sticking out, it didn't go all the way down to the esrog. And Vav is Nital Koladad, or if the entire stem is removed and there's no hole there, which would mean it was cut off. In all those cases, you can remark them in Ein Loy Acher if you cannot get if you don't have another esrog. Even if other people in the city have an esrog, you don't have to go knock on their door. You can still use these esrog. But if the whole stem was yanked out of the top of the esrog, there's actually a hole there, that's possible. Okay, now we're talking about an esrog that grew without a pitim. There's cases where you can be matter an esrog even if the pitim fell off after you remove the esrog from the tree. In other words, it grew naturally with a pitim, but the pitim fell off. If while the esrog was still on the tree, the pitim already dried out completely, it's also moisture has already went away from it, so it's completely dried out. Then he says if it's completely shriveled by the time you cut it off the tree, it's as if it was never there and there's no problem. Since it's already totally dried out, ain't the law unique way esrog. It's not anymore getting nourished by the esrog. That's only if it's so dried out, like it's not even connected. Sometimes it'll already fall off when it's connected to the tree. Sometimes it waits. But if it looks like it's pretty dried out, but it ends up breaking off, so if Nissan Krell says if it fell off, then we'd allow it. It was dried up before. But if it wasn't, then it's going to be a problem. Okay. There's a whole bunch of shilas over here. There's a whole bunch of shilas over here on the esrog. The pitum falls off. Let's see. If an esrog really had a pitum, but while it was still in the tree, it dried out. It's naturally fell off because that's how this particular species works. That's called kosher. That's how it normally grows. But Rav Vosner said, if it falls off while it's on the tree, we consider it like it never had a pitum. That's the normal growth of this berry. It's like many fruits grow with some type of sheath that eventually fall off. We would treat it like it never had a pitum. Since most esrogim, the pitum does fall off while it's growing on the tree. Now those are b'davka to buy an esrog without a pitum. If the esrog and pitum, yesh chash murkav. There's a chash murkav. The growers try to graft them and modify them so that the pitum should stay strong. So if you get an esrog with a pitum, you might have one that's a victim of grafting. However, Abel Yashiv says, "Sherakam pitum nafal ba'oda esrog cotton." The only time you say an esrog is kosher is if, as part of its natural growth, when it's very premature, the pitum falls off. If the pitum falls off naturally before the esrog reaches 1/3 of its growth, that's considered an esrog that does not have a pitum naturally. Then it's possible to have kosher. So that's a big problem according to Rabbi Yashiv. So Rabbi Yashiv says better get an esrog with a pitum. Because otherwise you need to be afraid that maybe you had a pitum and the pitum fell off. So you see there's a lot of controversy about whether or not you should get a pitum, not pitum. I don't know. It's hard to find an esrog with a pitum. And if naki, you're better off on the first day using an esrog, even if it has blatlach on it, but it has a pitum. Than taking a nice clean esrog without a pitum. So you see, there's a big controversy if it's better to have an esrog with a pitum or without a pitum. Okay, let's see the Gemara bite. but at the end of the day, you can't be yoytzel chaladeus unless you buy multiple esrogim. Because clearly, there's a very strong controversy amongst the poskim if it's better to get one with a pitum or without. Okay. Niklaf, if the esrog had some of its skin peeled off, and we're not talking about the white pulp, that's the peri, we're talking about the veneer, the yellow veneer. Some of it got peeled, and because all of it was niklaf, it's going to be kosher because it's all going to be the same color. But the niksasa, if only part of it was peeled, so then you're going to have two different colors, it's going to be menuma. It's going to look like a spotted esrog, which is Rashi's approach. Tosfos brings on the other sheet, just hold exactly the opposite. If it's all removed, then it'll be possible. If part of the skin is removed, it'll be possible. Nistag nikaf. Your esrog has a split down the center, or nikav it as a whole. Tani ula b'chenina. Nikav nekev mefulish b'mashu. If the hole goes right through from end to end of the esrog, that's even a mashu missing is going to be possible. V'she'enim foolish, but if it's not through and through, it's just a hole in the surface of the esrog, the you need it to be missing a share of an iser. There's a shayla how many centimeters that is, but it's a considerably bigger amount. Now the question is, what is mafulish? Mafulish means through and through. So if you took a needle, you put it right through from one end of the esrog to the other end of the esrog. But there are shittas who learn that, and Tosfos brings them down as well, that if you put a needle through the side of the esrog and it reaches into the seed sac or the citrus area, that's called mafulish, because you've totally punctured the fruit side. So even though the needle doesn't come out the opposite side, if you puncture into the place where the seeds are, into the citrus area, that itself is considered mafulish, and therefore if it's missing even a mashahu, it will be possible it's chaser. But if it's not mafulish, there's just a hole in the side of the esrog that's not deep, it has to be missing the size of an iser of flesh. What if the esrog got simanim of a treifa animal, which at first glance is an absurd shayla? What in the world does treifa have to do with the psul of an esrog? But from the maskana of the Gemara of what symptom it's referring to, it'll make more sense. So what's Allah? What is the shayla? In niklaf, if it's a question of niklaf, because if an animal is gluda, it's niklaf, it's treifa. Tanina, we already looked at that niklaf is possible. In this deck, if we're talking about an air that's split up from top to bottom, which Rashi says compares to a case where the kana, which is the windpipe, it looks like it's made out of a series of rings, and if it's sliced lengthwise from top to bottom, and all the rings are sliced, then the animal is a treifa. So we're comparing that to an esrog that's sliced vertically from top to bottom. Tanina, it's also on our first Mishnah that it's possible. And the nikav, and if it's nikav, like by trevis, if there's a hole in the membrane around the brain, nikav kruma moyach, the animal is treifa. But we have nikav as well, we know. Tanina, we look nikav, if it's missing, it's possible. If it's not missing, it's double. So to Gemara, that's not our shayla. Kikam aboiler, the question of Sibani treifa is something that actually has a relevance to trevis. Because he said in Chulin, Raya shenishbicha kisai. What if the lung is like a spongy material? What if everything inside the lung dissolved? So now the lung is like a bag of mush. So the halacha is kshera. It's going to be kosher. In other words, we say clearly this animal is not for sure going to die. It could heal. Its lungs could get healed. And Rava said, "Who the kaimis and puna." That's only if the bronchial tubes that go in to the lungs, if they're still intact, and it's just the pulp, the mass of the lung got mushy inside, that will be okay. But then it will be treifa. If the bronchial tubes themselves have dissolved, then it will be treifa. So hachamai, here we're asking the same question. What if the inside of the esrog sort of became mush? And the question is, if you say that it's also going to rot out and eventually disintegrate, and it won't be able to regenerate itself. So that's why it's somewhat irrelevant to trephis, because the question is, this is a malady, but the question is, will it be able to heal itself and rejuvenate itself? Zok Gemara, maybe there's no comparison from a treifa animal to an esrog. Maybe by trephis, if the bronchial tubes are intact, but the lung has turned to mush, there it might heal itself because it won't be exposed to air. It's inside the animal. Therefore, hadabari, it'll be healed, and you might have an argument that it's not treifa. Here, air, I don't know how air punctures the esrog, but there'll be air there. Therefore, seruchim esrachas, we're afraid that it'll rot out, and therefore the esrog will be puzzled. Or maybe the esrog is covered. That was the question. So our question is, as an esrog whose inside sort of turned to mush. Question is, will they be fine? So Tashma,
is the esrog still on the tree? Is the esrog still on the tree?
I don't think so.
So how do you compare it to an animal that's still living, or was the animal? Well, the animal's dead as well. You just said it would have.
That's right. If it would have when it was alive. So Tashma, esrog tapuach surach. So the it seems like it's two separate conditions: a blown up esrog or a rotten esrog, or kavush, or if it's been soaked, like soaked for a long time, or sholik if it's been heavily cooked, or kushi, or if it's black, or lovan if it's white, numar if it's spotted, puzzle. Esrog kekadar, an esrog that's round like a ball, puzzle. Yeshem afatiyum. Even if it's like a double esrog, if it looks like a Siamese twin, two esrogim sort of bonded together, is also possible. Esrog abayser, a small esrog, Rashi is katan kapula love when it's very small, it's not fully grown. Tosha says even if it's larger than that, but if it's not fully developed. What about godly b'tfus? The ashir kamin beri acheres. What if when the esrog was only a blossom, you put a form around it, and as the esrog grew, it filled the form, and you made it look like a gingerbread man? The lach is puzzle because it doesn't look anything like an esrog. So now that we've listed this whole brisa, let's go back to analyze it because we want to extract information related to our shaila about a mushy esrog. So Zok Gemara, Katani Miyas, Tapuach Saruach. What are these two cases? My love Tapuach Mibachutz. Tapuach means it's blown up on the outside, it looks unhealthy on the outside. The Saruach is Midafnim, and Saruach is referring to an internal issue, which is maybe the issue of it being mushy inside. And therefore, we have a raya that it's possible, because the Brisa says Tapuach Saruach is possible. So that's not at all the condition that this Brisa is discussing. We remain unknown with a condition where there's deterioration on the inside. The tafuach and seruach and our brisa are both conditions that happen on the outside of the esrog. One is speaking where it looks bad outside, but it's not smelly. So tavach Rashi says shenaflu b'kshavim b'tolish tavach, sort of blew up. It's discolored. It looks weird. And hadasarach avagav tavach, even though it's not blown up, but it's rotten on the outside. So that's one pshat in Rashi. Another pshat in Rashi is that tavach means it's rotting and sarach means it smells. But they're both discussing conditions on the outside, so it's not relevant to the shadow that we had if there's a problem on the inside of the esrog, and therefore we don't have a right. Amar, esrog kushi possible. We're going to go back and analyze these conditions that we just listed in the brisa. A black esrog is possible. But Tanya kushi kosher, we learned that a black esrog is kosher. Zok Gemara, doima kushi possible. If it's the species, the proper species that's designed that grows black, then it would be kosher. But if you have a regular esrog that turns black, that's when it's possible. That's the first step. Amar Abaye, ki tananami masnisen doima kushi. The Mishnah that says that an esrog kushi is possible is the one that's doima kushi, and the Mishnah that says the esrog kushi is kosher is referring to a real esrog kushi, which normally grows that way. That's one that's possible. That was Abaye's svara. So Abaye is saying that an esrog that's supposed to be black is kosher everywhere, and the esrog that's not supposed to be black is possible everywhere. Rava says it depends on who you are and where you live. Rava Amar loikacha halon balu. If you live in an area like an Eretz Yisrael where there's no such thing as black esrogim around, black is not normal, so you're not allowed to use a black esrog. But if you live in Bavel, Rashi says, which is right near Eretz Kush, therefore it's normal in your area to use such esrogim, and therefore it will be kosher. So this is a real eye-opener, because it tells you that what hadar is depends on who you are. It's subjective to who you are. If you're in a place where black is common, then in your place black won't be a problem. Right, what area you are in. Right, that's right. So we have to be careful when you throw off a YouTube. I know that. But it's fascinating that hadar is not universal. Hadar depends on what culture is in that area, and if that type of esrog is going to be used. So let's talk more about it. Esrog abayis, undergrown esrog, not fully developed. Amar Rabbi Kiva, who says that something is a fruit that's not fully developed, is not a fruit, and that's why it's possible for an esrog. Rabbi Shimon, who says a different halacha, it's also going to be based on the common thread that an underdeveloped fruit is not considered a fruit. Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Kiva had Amaran. He says it's possible to use such a fruit for an esrog. Rabbi Shimon Mai, where does Rabbi Shimon say a similar thought? So tomorrow the Tanya, Reb Shimon Poiter Esra Esrogim B'Potman. There's a question if you have to take Meiser on Esrogim that are not properly developed. So Reb Shimon holds your Potter. So that would indicate that Reb Shimon holds it's not a peri. If it's not a peri, there's no chiv to take Meiser on it. Amalei Abayi, no, they're not connected. The Pshita of Reb Akiva and the Pshita of Reb Shimon are not connected. Dimaloi, Atkan like Kamar Reb Akiva Hacha. Why did Reb Akiva say that this esrog is possible? It's not because it's not a peri. It's the bein hadav. It is a peri, and therefore you would be mechuyev in meiser. It just it lacks hadar, and that's why you can't use it as an esrog. Aval hasam, but maybe when it comes to taking meiseris, Karban Shvili, he'd agreed that it's a peri and you got to take meiser. Inami, or on the flip side, Atkan like Reb Shimon Asam. Reb Shimon only said over there that your pot of meiseris is el dechsiv aser te aser is called to buas zaraka. Kederech shebnei adam maitzin lizriya. You have to be able to. The peri has to be a peri that's developed enough that if you planted its seeds, it would grow. That is Reb Shimon's individual shita. So this could be a fruit, but since it's not developed enough that its seeds will grow, Reb Shimon has a shitas yochid that says that that's part of a meiser. But maybe he holds it is a good peri and you can use it for an esrog. So the Gemara is saying that there's no connection between Reb Shimon's shita that you're part of a meiser on such an undergrown esrog and the shita of Reb Akiva holds that you cannot use it. And Dr. Gemara, this is not disputable, it's not debatable. The su loy midi. Conversation is over. There's no connection between these two sheets. God libetfus. What happens if you grew it in a form? You know, there's some liquors that, like I think there's a pear liquor that the bottle comes with a full pear inside it. And the way they do that is it's not like a ship in a bottle that you can construct afterwards. They actually put the bottle over the pear when it's a very small pear when it's growing. So they put protection around the esrogim too in orchards to protect them from getting damaged. But what if you decided that you wanted your esrog to be in the shape of a gingerbread man? So you took a form, it's a gingerbread man, put it over the esrog, and when the esrog grew, it grew into the form. Puzzle, that will be possible. Amarava, lo yishanu ela kamin beri acheres. The only time there's a problem of it being in a form is if you force the esrog into a shape that's not normally an esrog shape. But if you created a shape that's the form of an esrog, then it's not a problem. Why do I need Rabbi to tell me that? The Brisa says it very clearly. Kemin beri acheres nan. The Brisa only says it's possible if you changed it from the form of an esrog. So why do I need the Rabbi to say this? If you made it look like the wheel of a water mill, a water wheel, it's a wheel that has little pockets in it that the water forces it to turn. Imagine if that wasn't just a wheel. Imagine if it was a long cylinder. So you made your esrog look like that. You created a series of grooves, bleed this all the way around the perimeter. You might think that would be possible because you modified the esrog. Kamash Malon, since it still looks like an esrog, it's going to be possible. Itmar. Esrog shenagvu achporim. What if you have an esrog that mice took a bite out of it? Omar Rav said, Ein zeh hadar. No explanation required. It's a little bit repulsive to use an esrog that a mouse took a bite out of. Is that so? But Rab Chanina matpilba v'nafakba. Rab Chanina would take a bite out of his esrog and then he would use it for the mitzvah. So how could you say it's not hadar? In fact, the Gemara, Rab Chanina is tamazai shver. Rab Chanina kasher masnisin. It's chasr. The mitzvah says it's an esrog chasr. You can't use it. So tomorrow that's not fair. Bishlam masnisin Rab Chanina like kasher. Bishlam according to the Mishnah that says chasr is possible. There's no problem for Rab Chanina. Can be yom tov rishon, can be yom tov sheni. But yom tov rishon the esrog cannot be chasr. But yom tov sheni it could. Maybe Rab Chanina took a bite out of his esrog on yom tov sheni. El Rav kasher. According to Rab Chanina is shver because it's not hadar. There's a bite taken out of it. Rav could say, what are you talking about? Shiny achbarim to meisi. There's a huge difference between an esrog that you took a bite out of and an esrog that a mouse took a bite out of. I said if a mouse took a bite out of it, it's moist. But if you took a bite out of it, it's not a problem. Ikudami Amarav Zehata. Rav said even if a mouse took a bite out of it, it is hadar. And the proof is Rab Chanina. Rab Chanina matpil ba v'nafak ba. Rab Chanina kasher mashisin. It's chaser. So the same terms as before. Like kasher can be yom tov rishon, can be yom tov sheni. Now there's a massive problem over here because an esrog is muksa. You're not allowed to eat an esrog on sukkahs. So how could Rab Chanina take a bite out of his esrog? So the olam tumult about it. So one of the swears I heard is very simple. It's speaking where Hanina did not have Dalad Minim. He did not have Dalad Minim. He had an esrog, but he didn't have the lulav. He didn't have the das. He didn't have rubbish. So there was no chance for him to be Mekayim the mitzvah, and therefore it's not Hukshel Mitzvah because he doesn't have the mitzvah. And coming into Sukkot, he never had a mitzvah. He tried getting the esrog and he got it, but he couldn't get anything else. So he has no mitzvah. So therefore, he decided to take a bite out of it. And after he took a bite out of it, someone shows up with a lulav, the hadassim and the rubbish. Well, what about talk about?
So Yossi, does that mean that if somebody only has an esrog, he doesn't make a bracha?
Correct.
It's all or nothing.
That's right. And it makes perfect sense because the four minim are connected to four types of yidden. So either we're all together or we're nothing.
But yesterday you said to take the
as long as they're all there. If they have to all be there. Yeah. So this is mamish beautiful. You see the Hasidus fits in the halacha that the whole mitzvah of the Arba Minim is dafka when we're all together. That's the whole koyach. Without it, nothing.
So tefillin, if somebody only has tefillin shel yad, he doesn't just put that on. He has to do both.
I don't know. I don't know about tefillin. Tefillin is a machlokes if it's one mitzvah or two mitzvahs. That's why we make it two brachos. But the dalad minim is a different mitzvah than tefillin. Okay, so Shmuel saying now's a good time to say, just like the Arba Minim, we should all be here in shul together. So Shmuel saying I should encourage everybody to try to come to shul.
Well, tell Shmuel we are together. We are.
Shmuel said there's 4 empty tables here. Okay, let's see the Gemara right because we're running out of time. Zog the Gemara Esher Kotna, small Esher. The machlokes kan kach machlokes ba'avodim or kazolos. The same machlokes that we have here, like about the size of an esrog, that's the same machlokes that we have by toilet paper or toilet stone. In the olden days, before they invented cottonelle and all the gishmak soft toilet paper that we had, the other used to use rocks. And the question is are you allowed to? What size rocks are appropriate to use for those type of activities? The Tanya we learned. Ba'avodim or kazolos. Rashi learns they're sharp rocks. That's good to wipe yourself with. Tosis learns they're soft rocks. But whatever it is, the Tanya. The Shabbos, on Shabbos we learn Gimel avodim or kazolos muter lahachmas leveis hakisei. Even though normally rocks are muksa, you're allowed to take three rocks in order to use in the basic kisei, which should give you an idea of how much toilet paper you should typically use. So Gimel avodim or kazolos muter lahachmas leveis hakisei. The Kamishurin, how big are these rocks that you're allowed to carry with you? I don't know how this works because you have to be careful your hands don't get dirty. So I'm not sure exactly how it works. But you see that there's also a shear as to what the size is, whether it's an egos or kabetza. I don't know if it's totally in the same machloikis, but it's the same sizing. Rabbi Kiva once came with such a massive esser, it was on his shoulders. Avada, he didn't shake it that way. You have to shake it in your hand. But it was big enough that he carried it in on his shoulder. From there. They told Rabbi Akiva, a big esser that pastachnish, it's not hadar. You're only allowed to tie the lulav with its own min, which is what we use. We use lulav branches to tie the lulav. You can even use any type of string. I'm Reb Meir. They used to use straps of gold to wrap their lulav. If anybody has an article, I would love to know what the exact translation of gimoinius are.
Rashi.
What?
Rashi.
Gold fibers. Gold
fibers. Okay. So Amrullah, they told him, you think it was gold? They wrapped it with proper lulav rings, and then over the lulav rings they put gold. But avada it was the mean. Amar Rava, afilu b'siv, afilu b'ikri dikva. When you say you have to wrap the lulav with its min, it doesn't dafka mean with a lulav leaf. It could be any part of the palm tree. And sieve and ikri dikla, sieve is some type of mesh that naturally grows around the decal. And ikri dikla is the hard wood from the bottom of the decal that you cut into thin strips that will be able to be formed into rings. What is the svar of Rabbi Yehuda? Kashavar lulav tarich. He holds the chiyuv of the lulav. You have to bundle them together. And since it's a chiyuv, the ring is part of the mix. The ma'isa mina achrina. And if you use a ring from a different species, have a chamish mini, it'll be baltoishav. There'll be an extra min. V'amar Rabba mina aminu the siv the ikra the dikla mina the lulavahu. How do I know that siv? We should probably stop here because this sugya extends onto Amar Aleph. So we'll stop here and we'll namshach here tomorrow. Sorry, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yeah.